Vocaloid is not really a genre, but rather a niche of music. The purpose of this video is to posit that, since the seven-colored days of Nico Nico Doga in the late 2000s, many functional aspects of how Vocaloids perceived and defined have shifted considerably, resulting in the Vocaloid of then and the Vocaloid of now being two effectively different things. To understand this stance, I'll walk you through a cultural analysis of Nico Nico Doga as we identify what exactly separates these two entities. Late 2000s Nico Nico Doga can, easily, be characterized on a cultural level by three properties: the Idolmaster, the Toho Project, and Vocaloid. While there's much more to the subculture than this, these properties were all wildly popular amongst the general public, and, more importantly, go far to inform a specific cultural identity that can be useful in identifying what separates the Vocaloid of then and now. Between Idolmaster, Toho, and Vocaloid, what exactly is the common thread in their popularity? The answer is community. All three of these identities were heavily driven by fans and their creation and participation. It was commonplace to make Idolmaster dancing videos, for instance. Toho is a franchise that is arguably more created and identified by its fans than by ZUN himself. Take the case of the ever-popular Bad Apple, a song that was adapted from one of the games by Dojin Circle, had storyboarding done by a dude on Nico, and the modern shadow art PV done by another stranger who was inspired by his storyboard, altogether creating a cascading series of fan interactions that created the product we now think of as singular. Such kinds of histories can be drawn from many things that came out of that era's Nico Nico Doga, and indeed the same can be said of Vocaloid. It's easy to forget or otherwise overlook just how collaborative Vocaloid once was. For instance, while I'm sure everyone has seen Rolling Girl, much less of you probably know that the PV that everyone associates with the song was not launched with it, but rather was itself created for a fan cover. Similarly, if you look at one of the most adored songs ever, Servant of Evil, you'll see that the song launched with no PV at all, but rather a collection of pieces of fan art that Mothi had compiled for Daughter of Evil. There are, now, many different PVs for that song, using many different arrangements. This is something that was created with time and fan dedication. I could trace these threads more and more for many different songs, but surely the point has been made. Vocaloid was something created by and for your average person. It was much more true at that time that the music was being produced by random singular people, with nothing but a story to tell and varying levels of compositional skill. With this, though, came an approachability. Mothi was only a composer, but artists and animators who resonated with his composition filled in the gaps with the skills that they had to offer, all out of a love for the story being told. All of this is emblematic of a love for Vocaloid itself. Another easily overlooked piece of the puzzle can be derived from the simple observation that depictions of the Vocaloid character designs themselves as actors, so to speak, used to be commonplace. The diva singing the song would also act out its story, creating a little theater that conveyed the message. There was obviously no rule that this is how it had to be, yet nonetheless it often was. While this has resulted in some hilarious things, like me still laughing endlessly to this very day that there's honest to god a main character of the Abelius Chronicles named Gumilia, there were also some wonderful moments playing with this expectation, such as Under the Blue revealing through clever use of color that the speaker was actually Luca the whole time, only at the end of the song. Why bring this up to begin with? Well, as I said, I think this is emblematic of something greater, of an affection and a trust for the medium. Needless to say, Hatsune Miku is not real. Beyond that, she is not even a character in the conventional sense of the word. I could not, with any success, describe to you what the character of Hatsune Miku is. Yet I have seen her perform as a clown, a religious zealot, a tree, a monster, a widower, a robot, a girl, a conductor, and whatever the hell a black rock shooter is. The point being that the Vocaloid as characterized entities were just as important a part of the personal expression as the composition itself. The end result was a community that didn't simply love the music, they loved the concept of Vocaloid. And you can feel that love, tangibly, through the things that fanbase created that became just as much a part of the music's identity as the music itself. You can feel it when you listen to Love is War and the screen explodes in ahs as Miku screams at the start of the song, or when the screen is completely inundated with the words Black Rock Shooter every time the phrase is sung in the song. It's this atmosphere that allows for things like Miku Miku no Shite Agaru to exist and be loved in the first place. At a surface level, the song is an okay electric pop song, honestly seeming sort of stupid. That, however, is exactly the point. The song is stupid. It's a joke having fun and personifying Miku. This song doesn't exist to be a compositional marvel or tell a grand moving narrative, but simply to have fun, because people liked these characters. There's a lot of other songs that categorize similarly, things like Go Google It or I Don't Care Who, Someone Please Date Me, that are expressions of fun, first and foremost, born out of a sincere form of love. Alongside Miku, Luca, the Kagamis, Kaito and Meiko, Gumi and Gakupo, you could experience the full emotional spectrum. Just as you could feel angst or grief, you could feel joy and love. You could laugh, cry, fear, and smile alongside these familiar voices and faces, with the sights and sounds created not by big companies, but by fellow fans like yourself. And if they could do it, surely you could contribute something, some idea that could resonate with another. Together, with one another, listening to the same music, you too could have fun. Almost every attitude I described is either gone or severely lacking in modern Vocaloid music. There are far less community contributions, the Vocaloid much more sparsely appears character designs, and that full spectrum of human emotion has narrowed considerably. I can't in good faith claim that there was any singular thing that created this divide, though I can hazard a guess, and unfortunately and unintentionally, it deals with something I also love a whole lot. Following the turn of the decade, a major change swept across the landscape, that being the arrival of the song series. Mikagura, Heisei, Shuen, and our beloved Kagepro all started within a couple years of one another and changed the storytelling meta. Each of these properties saw their own success, and with that changed the standard and expectation of the viewing audience. It was now no longer enough to be a dude who made a song without a video. It no longer mattered if you wanted to make a fan PV for a song you liked. Not when the new big thing is the 800th song in the Kagura project, and there's a beautiful music video hewn from the earth by Shido's blood offering of 10 small children. More and more, these increasingly complex stories, told with their own characters who would grow and evolve with the narrative, took center stage. Only smelly Grandpa Avelia still used the Vocaloid as characters, except with NA of course, but shh, we give you a pass. These projects were full productions, made with teams of composers, arrangers, and artists who pumped things out with a consistent and high standard. The new kids were on the block and we were playing their game. Now, the single you made in your room was not nearly as interesting as solving Aya's murder. The end result being the gradual loss of the small composers, and with them the gradual loss of Vocaloid as not only a tool, but an identity. This was accompanied by other composers yet leaving the medium to pursue music as professionals. But even this wouldn't have affected the soul of Vocaloid so much if that community was still as it was just a few years prior. However, the tone had clearly changed. By the time 2013 came and the Kagura project ended for the very first time, the damage had been done. Of the many song series, Kagepro was just about the only one to finish. Heisei technically saw an ending, but the music dropped off and disappeared. Mikagura was resolved through an anime and novel series, but again, at a certain point the music stopped telling the narrative. Worse yet, poor Shuen no Shiori died in the womb, leaving a murder mystery never finished. As these projects bloomed in scope, they began to encompass things like novels and manga, and most of them just couldn't sustain themselves. The same song projects that consumed the community whole died like beach whales before the decade was even half finished. That said, they had enough time in the spotlight to have permanently changed the landscape. Even if they were gone, their legacy had lived on. What a Vocaloid song was had been shaped by their presence. A certain level of production value became standard, a certain level of compositional complexity, a certain tone and mood that far less people would try and replicate, and many of those who did would eventually tire themselves out in doing so. Let it be noted that I quite obviously love the Kagura project, and Shuen no Shiori will forever be my small handicapped child that I won't let anyone make fun of. I have made hours upon hours of videos about these stories, but while I love them as stories and for the characters they created, I do firmly believe that they were also the bullet that killed that time I loved dearly. It was these very same song projects that murdered what Vocaloid meant when I fell in love with it, the Vocaloid I still love to this day. And while the Kagura project is one of my all-time favorite stories, I couldn't in confidence say that I would choose it over the Vocaloid that it had to destroy to be created. What resulted was a great drought, where both the old community and the lovers of the song projects faded, and what eventually took their place were, by and large, big productions that had become functionally indistinguishable from any other Japanese pop or alternative music, aside from the fact that they were, technically, sang using an increasingly tiny handful of Vocaloid. I have no way of substantiating the claim I'm about to make, but while I'm sure that, head for head, there are many more people who like V Flower, the comparatively fewer people who really like, say, Luca, surely love her much more deeply for the connection the idea of Megarine Luca once had with the people who told her stories. There's no longer a wealth of individuals telling short little narratives touching upon countless emotions and ideas. There's no longer a community of people building on and celebrating each other's work, all unified under the faces and sounds of characters that they loved. There is, quite simply, no longer Vocaloid. One of my favorite songs is a little piece you may have heard called Hatamete No Hoto, the first sound. It's a simple track told from Miku's point of view, describing Miku's desire to immortalize the feelings of everyone who ever dared to give her their first sound. It describes her telling everyone that, even when everything is gone and everyone has left, Miku will never forget that sound. She will always cherish it and sing it just as clearly as the day you first gave it to her. This song came out in 2007, just 2 months after Miku was released. But I think it's more emotional and resonant now than it ever was then. People died, people left. For many reasons, the era that Hajimete no Hoto belonged to is gone and will never come back. As a result, the lyrics and message of the song matter so much more. Because that day Miku describes, where everything has changed, where that precious first sound she was given is forgotten about, has already come. However, just as the lyrics say, even though that time won't come back, even though Vocaloid will certainly never mean what it once did, will never feel the same way it had, every one of those sounds that gave it life will forever exist, sung just as they once were by the divas who gave them life the day those producers decided that they were perfect. The color of the sky, the smell of the wind, the depths of the ocean, even my song. They won't change. They'll stay just as they were then, the way they were at the first sound. Obviously, Miku is not real. These words were given to her by Malo. However, the idea still comes through, and matters because they're told with Miku's voice, because of just how emblematic they are of a time gone by. And damn if that doesn't make me sad. If you really like modern Vocaloid music, I'm happy for you. I don't intend to take anything away from you that you might find precious, only to highlight the differences and describe to you something by the same name that, once upon a time, I found very precious as well. Thank you. I'll see you again.